Entitled mom tries to force me to sell my property for her daughter's college and escalates when I refuse. I possess through law $34 million worth of real estate in our hometown, including a number of homes. Years of arduous labor, prudent financial decisions, and self-sacrificing actions have led to this. For background, I'm from a modest family. Both of my parents worked in blue-collar jobs and put in a lot of effort to give my siblings and I decent upbringing. Although it was out of their price range, they had always hoped to own their own home. Their upbringing stoked my desire and strengthened my resolve to improve my family's quality of living. My wife and I were in college when we first met. Raised by a single mother who worked several jobs to make ends meet, my wife's family had similar experience. She became aware of the importance of ingenuity and financial caution. Both of us aspired to overcome financial difficulties and provide a secure future for our kids. Over the years, my wife and I have been buying and flipping residences nonstop. We gradually accumulated a number of properties by carefully investing and saving every cent. Every property stood for years of toil, innumerable sacrifices, and a common goal between us. I am now the father of a son and a girl, two amazing children. In addition to being a source of revenue, our properties serve as a testament to our commitment to providing for our kids' futures. I had no idea that an entitled woman named Trudy, 40, who has been one of my tenants for a few years, would soon cause my life to take an unexpected turn. She lives in a cozy 3-bedroom home that I bought years ago before I married my wife, after careful saving. Her daughter's high school is adjacent to the property, which is situated in a desirable area of the city. After their daughter was born, Trudy's husband abruptly left her leaving her a single mother. I gave her subsidized rent to allow her to move in after learning about her situation. I wanted her and her daughter to be able to afford to live there even though I knew I would lose out financially. The rent has stayed the same over the years, and I have never raised it. Trudy had consistently paid her rent on time, making her a dependable tenant. Our relationship as landlord and tenant became informal, and we occasionally stayed in touch when she needed my assistance around the property. Her daughter was a senior in high school, getting ready to submit a college application. Trudy told me 3 months ago that her daughter was admitted to a renowned out-of-state university, which is an incredible accomplishment for any high school graduate. Unfortunately, her scholarship didn't even cover 10 fan tram of her tuition at this incredibly costly university. I was concerned about how they would handle the financial challenges of higher education because I was aware of them. Trudy asked to meet me one day. Without much hesitation, I accepted, assuming it had something to do with the necessary house renovations. As we sat down in the house's living room, she began by expressing her gratitude for my generosity and providing her with a large portion of it. She went on to tell me how much she wanted Rosa, her daughter, to go to the university of her dreams. But after calculating the costs, which included accommodation, tuition, and other charges, she found that it was too much for her to manage by herself, even after applying for financial aid, researching scholarships, and taking a part-time job in addition to her full-time employment. It was still insufficient. Perhaps she was going to ask if she could postpone paying the rent for them, which would have made sense, so I shook my head firmly in understanding. Rather, I was flabbergasted by Trudy's astounding desire for me. She requested that I sell the house where she was residing, as she went on to explain that the property I owned and had rented out to her would bring in a healthy profit, enabling her to pay for her daughter's college education. I gave her a questioning glance. "Are you serious?" With a mixture of surprise and incredulity, I replied, "You want me to sell my property to pay for your daughter's college tuition?" Trudy argued that it was her one chance to ensure her daughter's future, and her eyes begged me to do so. She said she was sure the entire property could pay for her daughter's college expenses because she had already had it evaluated. Since I couldn't possibly sell my house to pay for her daughter's tuition at a prestigious university, I asked her if it had gone insane. I informed her that I had sentimental attachment to this house and that I would not be selling it for nothing. Once more, Trudy persisted, claiming that I could lend her the money and that her daughter would reimburse me after graduating. I knew how important a college education was, yet I refused to give in to her ridiculous demands. It was evident from listening to her entreaties that she was committed to finding a method to support her daughter's aspirations, even if it required proposing an absurd idea to an unfamiliar person. I calmly told Trudy that I couldn't just give up the property because it was a big portion of my income. I should not be responsible for her daughter's tuition. I said her to look into more cheap possibilities or ask family members for assistance if she was unable to pay for her daughter's tuition at the institution. Trudy persisted in pressing the matter in spite of my attempts to persuade her to see the OBVYS, claiming that I was the only person who could assist and that selling my property and giving her the money wasn't a huge concern. I asked Trudy not to come to me about this ever again, and when I realized it was not working, I left the property. I asked her to consider how ridiculous her request sounded and come up with an alternative. I had hoped that she would ultimately see her error, but Trudy persisted. Throughout the following few weeks, the situation grew more intolerable as Trudy's daughter was getting closer to starting college. Trudy persuaded me daily to sell my property as quickly as possible, even though I denied it. She even protested by ceasing to pay her rent. As Trudy persisted in her tie-in that my property would solve her financial problems, our formerly cordial relationship deteriorated and our tension increased. She believed that my refusal endangered her daughter's future and was self-serving. However, because she was refusing to pay her rent, I was losing money. We had an unbreakable pact, so I told her that if she didn't comply, I would take the case to court. It was becoming more and more obvious that her demands were endless. When Trudy began bringing other people into our argument, it was a tipping point. She spoke to her neighbors and friends, accusing me of being a callous landlord who would not assist a young girl in achieving her goal. She emphasized her position as a struggling single mother and informed them that although I was quite affluent, I would not lend her the money. Though she confided and sympathized with her story, Trudy used social media to further her cause, posting on Facebook that she blamed me for her daughter's failure to go to college. Rumors soon began to spread throughout our area. People understood her predicament and believed that I could help, but was purposefully refusing to. I couldn't help but feel alienated in my own neighborhood. At last, my wife made the decision to contact Trudy, and in order to resolve the growing dispute, she thought that open communication would be a way to resolve the growing tension. But Trudy wasn't in the mood for a quiet conversation. She went on a rant right away, claiming that the only way she could ensure her daughter's future was for me, the landlord, to sell the house. My wife made sincere attempts to persuade Trudy, but her tie-in remained unwavering. She accused us of being self-centered and claimed that we had the money to pay for her daughter's college tuition. Trudy persisted in pressuring my wife to comply with her requests, and the talk went on in a monotonous loop. Her message had a Cybele effect on the neighborhood and the local community, portraying me as a wealthy and callous landlord who would not assist a young girl in realizing her aspirations. We were viewed with suspicion by those neighbors who had previously been friends with us. They started to think that although I was consciously refusing to do so out of selfishness, I did have the capacity to lessen her daughter's financial problems. Others who understood my background, my diligence, and the truth of my circumstances agreed with me, and were equally horrified by Trudy's bold request that I pay for it. They served as a reminder to me that I had to safeguard my assets and uphold the legacy I had worked so hard to establish. Every day, the community grew further polarized, with some people feeling sorry for Trudy. I remained firm in my resolve to defend my property in the face of increasing pressure. I had worked hard and made sacrifices for years to earn it, and I wasn't about to give it up easily. Trudy, meantime, kept stoking the fire by accusing me of being uncaring and taking advantage of her by letting her live for free. Her statements on social media grew more outspoken as she talked about her daughter's perseverance and the innumerable sacrifices she had made in order to become ready for college. Consequently, the argument progressed from a private dispute to a public discussion. My family was beginning to feel the effects of the accusation. As a result of their peers repeating the untrue things they had seen on social media about me, my children started to be bullied at school. Seeing how distressed they were by this circumstance was awful. I made the decision that it was time to act at that point. Since Trudy was affecting my children, I had remained silent, believing that she would ultimately cease, but it was time to correct the record and stand up for my moral. I contacted a lawyer that focused on tenant-landlord disputes and property disputes in order to stop Trudy's defamatory efforts and preserve my reputation in the community. We quickly wrote a cease and desist letter. According to my lawyer, the cease and desist letter was the beginning of our legal struggle, and we would go all the way to court if Trudy didn't change her mind. Trudy was obviously shocked to receive the letter. She tried calling me on the phone, but I declined to take her calls. Then, before things got out of hand, she texted me to say she wanted to chat and make amends. She said we could have a conversation and that it was all a big misunderstanding. I responded by saying I was going to sue her. She was going to regret ever trying to play me, so I encouraged her to embrace herself. Trudy has been adamant that I cover her daughter's tuition, damaging our family's reputation in the town and online, so I know this will be a difficult battle. My attorney is already getting ready for the case by detailing all of the unfounded charges and the damage she has done to us over the past few months. Some of my family members said me to give her a chance to resolve the matter, as she is a single mother attempting to act in her child's best interests after learning that I was bringing her to court. So Reddit, am I the jerk for taking the entitled mother to court rather than selling my home to cover her daughter's college expenses? Update. Trudy sent a letter of her own containing more defamatory remarks and threats in response to our legal action. Despite being aware of her financial circumstances, she has accused me of charging exorbitant rent, which she claims prevented her from saving money for her daughter's school. Her willingness to deceive and go to such lengths to achieve her goals is astounding. I've already given her subsidized rent, so it's annoying to see her play the Tim when her claims are unfounded. She is obviously attempting to take advantage of the situation, and I will not allow it to occur. Trudy's determination to fight to the end is apparent. Although my attorney, Barney, has reassured me that we have a solid case because her charges are unfounded, he has said me to be ready for a drawn-out and taxing court process. I can't help but consider how rapidly things have gotten out of hand. I had no desire to find myself in a courtroom, particularly with someone who had previously occupied my life. However, there are instances when you must defend what is rightly and stand your ground. Even if Trudy may have good reasons, I can't let her force me to sell my property. The future of my family is on the line, and I'm committed to see this through to the end, no matter how difficult it gets. Update 2. The legal process has formally started since my last report. It had been agonizingly painful to wait for the court date. Tension permeated the courtroom as both sides presented their cases and supporting documentation. Trudy presented herself as a struggling mother who is committed to securing her daughter's future, accompanied by her lawyer. In a detailed account of financial difficulties, her lawyer emphasized how my property had been the last straw for her daughter's aspirations to enroll in a prominent out-of-state university. Trudy's emotional statement was filled with emotions as she talked about the sacrifices she had made as a single mother, including the long hour she put in at work and her unshakable dedication to her daughter's achievement. She portrayed herself as a mother who had done everything she could, talking about her tenacious job hunts and multiple applications for financial aid and scholarship. Trudy's lawyer persisted in portraying me as a rich, callous landlord who put money over a young girl's aspirations during the proceeding. They suggested that I had been aware of Trudy's financial difficulties, but had nevertheless taken advantage of her predicament by charging her exorbitant rent. Trudy presented a family friend as a witness, claiming to have overheard a conversation between Trudy and me in which I supposedly offered to sell the property to pay for her daughter's college education. This was the most shocking turn of events. When this flagrant untruth was told in court, I sat there in shock. Barney, my lawyer, vigorously disputed this allegation, claiming that no such discussion had ever occurred. He made the deliberate decision to the witness's account. The family acquaintance who testified on the purported conversation was first subjected to cross-examination by Barney in order to determine the witness's memory's credibility. He asked a number of specific questions in an attempt to uncover discrepancies or holes in their memory. Barney inquired about the time, date, and place of the alleged conversation. The family friend found it difficult to respond with consistent information and was unable to provide any hard proof to back up their claims, such as emails or texts. Under examination, their testimony grew more and more dubious. Barney provided evidence that directly refuted Trudy's account, severely undermining the case's credibility. He presented documents of emails and texts that were sent back and forth between Trudy and myself at the time the said agreement was allegedly made. These texts made it quite evident that she had never brought up the idea of selling the land to pay for her daughter's schooling. Rather, they proved that it was Trudy who was always putting pressure on me to sell the house. Furthermore, according to testimony from a neighbor who shared a residence with Trudy, Trudy had been paying lower rent than any other renter. To support this claim, my attorney retrieved receipts from other local tenants. Barney continued by arguing that the neighbors evident and the lack of any written or electronic correspondence about the purported pledge Trudy made called into question the veracity of the family friend story. This testimony was inadmissible as hard proof. We then concentrated on demonstrating that Trudy had purposefully gone to considerable measures to damage my reputation on social media, which had led to my kids being bullied. In a detailed account of Trudy's communications and posts on social media, my lawyer claimed that I was a callous and uncaring landlord who did not encourage her daughter's aspirations in order to win the community's sympathy and support. These posts were rife with emotional appeals and downright lies. We pointed out that these posts were purposefully written to present her as a struggling mother who was doing everything in her ability to ensure her daughter's future. But in actuality, she was using emotional blackmail to pressure me into selling my house. Barney then displayed screen grabs of direct messages and comments left by people who had interacted with Trudy's posts on social media. Because of the misleading information Trudy provided, some of these local residents had developed a bad VYEW. These remarks range from expressing empathy for her predicament to flatly accusing me of being a callous landlord taking advantage of her circumstances. Along with the social media data, we also included witness statements from my kids who said that Trudy's posts caused them to be bullied at school. They described how classmates harassed and name-called them after echoing the untrue statements they had heard about their father on social media. My lawyer contended that the bullying my kids experienced was directly related to Trudy's unfounded charges on social media. Trudy's purposefully false story had a negative impact on my family's welfare in addition to harming my reputation. This evident-based presentation clearly illustrated how Trudy's social media behavior affected my kids in real life. I continue to believe that justice will be done as the legal process progresses. The truth has been revealed, and the untrue allegation against me have been exposed by the evident that has been given thus. In my opinion, the court will recognize the manipulation and provide a just resolution. Third update. We prevailed. The legal proceedings have made the past month a taxing one. Unexpected turns and twists have made it feel like a roller coaster ride. It became more and more obvious that Trudy's allegations were unfounded as my attorney began to provide a testimony and supporting documentation. When she introduced a family acquaintance who gave a bogus statement about a pledge, I had never made her attempt to control the event failed. The legitimacy of the witness's assertions is seriously called into question due to the absence of hard proof and discrepancies in their testimony. The court declared the result and decided in my favor after carefully reviewing all of the testimony and supporting documentation. I was quite relieved by this and thankful that the judge saw through all of the unfounded allegations. After being convicted of defamation, Trudy was mandated to compensate me for the damage she had done to my reputation. This involved paying the past month rent as well as any further penalty. Additionally, a restraining order was granted to stop Trudy from speaking negatively about my family or me in the future. My conduct and my right to defend my property were upheld by this decision. I saw Trudy seated next to her attorney, looking defeated as the court case came to an end. As I looked at her daughter, Rosa, I couldn't help but think that her mother's conceit had ruined her hope. Justice has been done, and this nightmare is now over. Everyone learned the value of standing up for themselves and not allowing the bold demands of others to undermine our moral tie-ins. Now that my home and our means of subsistence are safe, I can proceed with a fresh sense of confidence. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has helped me along the way thus far. My family and I endured tremendous emotional strain and hardship, but in the end, the truth won out. Fourth update. 6 months have passed since my previous update. Trudy has been successfully silenced by the restraining order. Since my court Tory and the damages she was required to pay for defamation offered some measure of comfort for the damage done to my reputation, I served Trudy with an tie notice and she and her kid were forced to vacate. Even if their situation is still difficult, I realized I was no longer in charge of them. Although I felt a little sorry for her daughter's miseducational prospects, the truth was that Trudy's bold request had placed their family in a challenging position. Everyone soon saw the full depth of Trudy's lies after the court ordered her to remove her defamatory social media posts. When her daughter Rosa unexpectedly contacted me to apologize, that was the last I heard from them. I had watched Rosa grow up, and she had always been a wonderful child, but I stopped communicating with them when her mother began making unfounded accusations. She wanted to contact me after her mother publicly lost the case, which startled me. She expressed sincere regret in her message for her mother's actions and the resulting difficulties for her family. She acknowledged that her mother's actions had harmed both of our families and thanked us for our understanding and patience during the process. Rosa also mentioned that they had moved to a more reasonably priced neighborhood and that she had made the decision to continue her study at a nearby college. She told me she had begged her mother to back off in a conversation she had with her following the conclusion of the judicial proceeding. "I'm determined to secure my own future without making any bold demands," Rosa said. Because of the bogus claims made by her entitled mother, I felt sorry for her at such a young age. I told her that it was great that she was taking charge of her own life and that everyone deserved a second chance. I told her that the past was behind us and wished her well in her studies. Our lives have adapted to a new normal since Trudy and her daughter left my property. The burden of the unfounded allegations and the harassment our kids endured has been removed. We intervened by getting in touch with our kids' school and addressing the bullying they experienced. At last, our family may now proceed in harmony. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.